Hello and welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. I'm joined by Logan Glaser, contributing writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Logan, good to be on with you once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, Jeff.
So, Logan, it is Tuesday morning, so it's time for our waiver wire ads video. We do this every week. We tell you our favorite waiver wire ads for the week. We also give you a streaming defense as well because everybody likes to stream a defense. So we give you our best choice there. Also, Logan, should be another really interesting week. We had, unfortunately, a lot of injuries once again last week. So teams are going to be scrambling a little bit, I think, to fill lineups for this
Yeah,
week.
and then as you mentioned, we have got 6 teams on bye this week, so there's a lot of lineup changes are going to be being made around. Last week, kind of got burned by the top waiver pickup. I would think DeMarcado was probably the top player in most leagues. I saw him ranging from a couple $100 up to $700-800 in some TFC leagues. So it was definitely a bust on that big pickup last week.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my waiver wire ads, player that I mentioned, but I'm going to hit on that a little bit. And you're right, though. A lot of people blew a lot of their budget to get him. He was a bust. He actually had just a couple touches on the day, unfortunately. But we had a couple more injuries, too, which is going to open the door for some playing time for some players. And as you mentioned as well, 6 teams on a bye. Let's talk about those real quick. Let's mention them real quick, I should say. Carolina Panthers, Cincinnati Bengals, Dallas Cowboys, Houston Texans, New York Jets, Tennessee Titans. So a couple big teams on a bye this week. That'll make it a little bit tough as well. So, Logan, let's jump into this. Tell me your first waiver wire ad for week 7.
Yeah, first player I'm going to be looking at is going to be Zack Evans, running back for Los Angeles Rams. So Ronnie Rivers and Kyron Williams are expected to miss this week. So the volume is going to be there for Zack Evans. So he only has 4 career rushes in the NFL, good for 10 yards. So that's definitely a concern. We haven't seen much of him, but the volume is going to be, I think it's already announced that he's going to be their starting running back with that. I would not be surprised if Leonard Fournette actually looks into the Rams. I think he would be a really good fit there. It won't happen this week, but I really think Fournette might end up with the Rams, especially with them trying to eye in making the playoffs. So another guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, if you're in deeper leagues, speculative pickup. I'm good with that too. I think that's a good call. I think he would be a great fit for them, especially them really banged up at running back. I think that makes a lot of sense, Logan. I like that call. My first pickup is Jordan Mason with the San Francisco 49ers. So Christian McCaffrey has an oblique injury. He could miss some time. We know Elijah Mitchell's there. So this is another situation where you're not sure who's going to grab the carries in this backfield. I actually think Mitchell might get more carries if I had to pick one of the two, but he's owned in most leagues. So Mason's out there as well. We know San Francisco likes to split the carries at running back. Mason's owned in just 19.3% of leagues, and he's played really well with his chances this year as well. He's had some good production of late as the top backup to Christian McCaffrey, with Elijah Mitchell was actually banged up for the last few games. He was active last week, didn't get a touch in the game, unfortunately, for his owners, but he could be a lot more involved this week, Mitchell. But Mason's out there too. I think he has some good potential and a great offense, obviously. He has touchdowns 2 straight games as well. So I think he's a must-add in all fantasy formats, especially if you had Christian McCaffrey on your roster. So
Yeah, I
that's
think the
mine.
49ers have to play it safe and just give McCaffrey a week off, just especially with how much volume he gets in their games. And again, Super Bowl's not going to be won in week 7. Keep him healthy. Go ahead and
You're
sit.
right. It seemed just a matter, I hate to say it, but a matter of time before McCaffrey went down with his injury history and all the work he'd been getting. And it happened. So hopefully all the McCaffrey owners have been proactive and have Elijah Mitchell already on the roster or even Jordan Mason. So interesting to see how that will play out this week. All right, Logan, who's your next pickup?
Yeah, next one I'm going to be looking at is Craig Reynolds. He's only 8% owned, so he's available in most leagues on RT Sports. So it's looking like Montgomery is going to miss this week. Gibbs is still questionable, so I think a lot's going to come down to if Gibbs does play or not, if you can start Reynolds. So last time Montgomery missed and Gibbs was active, he only had 4 rushes for 15 yards. So that is concerning if Gibbs does play. But if Gibbs doesn't play, you're going to be getting a starting running back in the Detroit offense that is probably one of the best offenses right now in the NFL with putting up points. So I'm all for having Craig Reynolds in my lineup if both of those are out. I feel comfortable putting him in the starting lineup. If Gibbs does play, then I'm going to shy away from him, depending on your other options. But Reynolds has 24 rushes, 89 yards on the season with a touchdown. So he has had decent amount of carries throughout 6 weeks, but it all will come down to Gibbs' status for me on Reynolds this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out if Gibbs is active. Will Reynolds play more of the David Montgomery role? Will he be the feature back with Gibbs playing his usual role, or will Gibbs get more carries? Or like you said, it played out the other way where Gibbs actually got more of the work than Reynolds. So be really interesting to see how that works. So, unfortunately, as we talk about these running back situations, it seems like a lot of them are clouded, and it makes it tough
Yeah.
when it comes to starting these players because nothing's a sure thing with a lot of them right now, which is not what fantasy owners want to hear because I think they can play out a number of different ways, and it makes it risky to use any of them, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
All right, my next pickup is Wan'Dale Robinson with the New York Giants. So he's owned on 19.3% of leagues on our site. He continues to really emerge in this Giants passing attack. He had 8 catches for 62 yards last week. He has at least 5 receptions 3 straight games and 4 every game this season that he's played. His yardage numbers haven't been great, but the amount of weekly catches he is getting on a weekly basis really helps his fantasy floor, and I think he's just going to get better as the season progresses, and it's going to be the top pass catcher at receiver for the Giants. I know
Yeah,
that
I
passing
love
game.
Robinson. He's got tons of skill.
Yeah, I know that passing game's not very exciting, but somebody has to catch the ball outside of Darren Waller, and Robinson's that guy, and he's getting a lot of work. So I
Yeah,
think he's
and he
going
was
to pick
looking
up.
like that last year as well before his injury. I mean, he was their number one guy.
Yep, you are right there, Logan. He was definitely trending up before he got hurt. All right, Logan, who's your last pickup on the waiver wire for this week?
Yeah, third one is a little bit more owned, but I think he needs to be picked up in all leagues, and that's going to be Kareem Hunt. He's around 70% owned in RT Sports leagues currently. Last week, he had 16 fantasy points against San Francisco, and he's starting to get more carries and targets in that Browns offense. Last week, I was mentioned 16 points against San Francisco. He had 12 rushes, 47 yards, touchdown. Also had 3 receptions for 24 yards. Ford hasn't stood out to me as much. He did have a much better week last week, but I mentioned he only had like 2.6 yards per carry before last week, and that was mainly due to one really long run. So, and I also really like the Browns' upcoming schedule. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. They've got Indianapolis, Seattle, and Arizona. I think all 3 of those games are going to be great matchups for both Kareem Hunt and Ford. And with Hunt getting starting to get more looks, I like him as plug and place in the starting lineup these next 3 weeks.
So my last pickup is another running back as well. So we actually have 5 running backs on the list, but a lot of people are looking for running backs, so I think that's good. And that's Keontae Ingram with the Arizona Cardinals. As we mentioned, Amari DiMercato was the top pickup last week in most leagues. Ingram's still available in 32.3% of leagues. I actually got him in more leagues than DiMercato last week, so I'm kind of happy about that. It was Ingram that got the first carries in week 6, led the team in rushing. I still think it's going to be really hit or miss with these 3 backs sharing the work while James Conner's out. Damian Williams is there as well. And if you look at the snap count, it was actually DiMercato. He had the most snaps, played the most snaps out of the 3 backs last week. He got the least amount of touches, but he played the most snaps. So I could see it flipping where DiMercato is the top producer this week out of the 3 backs. If he keeps getting that amount of work, it seems to me they trust him the most in pass protection. So I think that bodes well for him to play more. But right now, Ingram's available in most of the leagues on our site, and he could end up being the guy that emerges as well. Again, it's just a fluid situation. I don't know how it's going to play out on a weekly basis just yet, but one of these guys could emerge at some point, so I think Ingram's worth grabbing. But again, as I mentioned, DiMercato, he actually played the most snaps out of all 3 of the backs. He got the least amount of touches, though. So I wouldn't
Yeah,
look.
you do not like that if you're
Yeah,
a fantasy owner. You hate those situations.
yeah, it is really scary. So again, I think it could change from week to week. But right now, I think Ingram might be the back I trust the most. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out as well this week. All right, Logan. enough with all the running backs. Let's talk about a streaming defense. Who's your streaming defense for week 7?
Yeah, defense for week 7 is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are currently 48% owned, so just under 50, over 50% available in leagues. Home game against Atlanta this weekend. Atlanta has a lot of questions coming into this game on their offense, what they're going to do with quarterback. Are they going to start with Ritter or are they going to go Heineke? Personally think they're going to sit Ritter after that game last week. I think he kind of cost them that game. He had 3 interceptions at the end of the game and looked terrible in the last couple of drives with that offense when they needed a touchdown. And they already had question marks going into that game with that and that performance. So I think they're going to start Heineke with that. So, and Bucks have a pretty good defense. They have 16 sacks on the season so far. They do have a defensive touchdown on the year, ranked in the top 15. So I like them to get after Atlanta this week.
Here's the funny thing about fantasy, though. Like Desmond Ritter, he has looked terrible on the field, but his fantasy numbers still aren't bad.
Yeah, they aren't terrible. I mean, that's what you want teams that are going to be throwing a lot and keep coming from behind. Like, that's why Jameis Winston was such a good quarterback a couple of years ago for fantasy, even though he was terrible for their team because so many pick sixes get the ball back in the offense.
Exactly. All right, enough about that. I'll tell you my streaming defense. I like your call, Tampa Bay, and it's the Raiders. So they're owned in just 16.7% of leagues on our site. So they're available in nearly over 80% of leagues, I should say. They play the Bears this week. They're going to be using a backup quarterback. Justin Fields is hurt. He's out for a little while. And the Raiders have at least 8 fantasy points, 2 straight games, multiple sacks, all but a game this season as well. So I think this Bears offense is in trouble. They're using a backup running back, backup quarterback. It's just a mess. So I like the Raiders defense. I think they're a great pickup in week 7. All right, Logan. That is a wrap on week 7 waiver wire ads. As always, really appreciate you joining me on the show. A lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on as always, Jeff.
Good luck to everybody out there navigating your waiver wires this week. Hope you have a lot of success in week 7. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.